A few months ago, Funcom rocked its Secret World community by announcing that it would be completely rebooting the game as a separate product called Secret World Legends. The original MMO would be going into maintenance mode, while Legends would retool the game to include action combat, a smaller multiplayer focus, better quest flow, and a free-to-play business model. All Secret World players looking to continue the game's epic saga would need to start from scratch, no exceptions. There would be no character imports and no transfer of progress. Funcom said that it needed to make this change to ensure the future survival of the Secret World, but was it really needed? Is this too much change too fast? Will Legends divide the community and alienate longtime fans? In under 2 months, Funcom is going to launch Secret World Legends, an attempt to give this game a rare second chance. But will this be exactly the shot in the arm this title needs? Or will it be the industry's next NGE fiasco? Okay, hi, this is Massively Justin, and here we are today with two young gentlemen who are in charge of Secret World Legends. Would you like to introduce yourselves really quickly, sirs?
Hi, my name is Romain Amiel, and I'm the game director on Secret World Legends.
I am Scott Jr. I am the executive producer for Secret World Legends.
Excellent. We've had some interviews with you already on the site, and we've been talking about this massive transition between the Secret World and Secret World Legends. So we had a lot of follow-up questions. Now, you've gotten already asked a lot of questions by MJ, so that was MJ's turn. Now it's my turn.
All right.
As a longtime player of the game, and also as an MMO journalist, I have a lot of very serious questions I'd like to have answered as candidly as possible. So I'd like to start by asking, what prompted the decision for Funcom to abandon MMOs after over a decade of cultivating an MMO audience?
I don't think abandon MMOs is really the proper term. I know you're probably referring an article maybe that Rui was quoted on a couple months ago. Is that what you're talking about?
Let me clarify that you've put Age of Conan and Anarchy Online in maintenance mode. You're no longer doing any active development, and you're taking the Secret World, which is a full-fledged MMO, and taking it down to what you're calling a multiplayer action role-playing game. So why the shift away?
Action? It's shared world RPG is the term we're using. Okay. With the Secret World, what we found is that what we felt the best part of the game was the story and the content, and we wanted to make that more accessible to a traditional RPG market, because we felt that resonated very well with them. Like early in development for the Secret World, we'd come out with ideas of like, is it even really an MMO? It is massively multiplayer in the sense, but we didn't focus on a lot of things that traditional MMOs focused on. We had a lot more about story and setting and character building. And so what we were thinking with Secret World Legends, or when we were going free to play, we wanted to instead open the market, like I said before, to a more traditional RPG market. The game is still a online role-playing game. It's still massive in the sense that, there's thousands and thousands of online characters. However, we're just taking it a couple steps back, where you're not going to be going into Kingsmith Town with hundreds and hundreds of people like you can on TSW right now. Instead, we're going to keep it a little bit smaller. But Agartha will still have that huge, there's lots of people around me. It's a central hub for me to group up, to discover new friends and go on adventures with.
Well, how does that make the game better to limit the social scope?
I don't think we're limiting the social scope.
By having smaller maps, I'm going to be encountering fewer people as I play.
In specific areas. So we felt that the story in the game worked better when you're not just seeing a thousand's an exaggeration, but when you're doing a quest for
I'll jump into it. I think some of the thing about the Secret World in particular is the way you do the mission. We try to do a lot about the immersion of the mission, that storytelling, and trying to make the story like somewhat about your character, like you're still part of an army, but what is important and what happens to you. And in general, the MMO aspect of the game had more of a tendency to ruin that. Like, you're going to get a mission that goes and tell you to kill that, big boss over there, who kills certain monsters, and then you arrive there, someone else was there a second ago, they killed everything, and you have to wait for the respawn. So these kind of potential like immersion breakers. So we wanted to try and avoid this, really trying to make sure that because the story is so important, it was more about your character as you play through. But we didn't want to remove that aspect that you are still part of the world, you're still part of this army. So the army is still there. We just want to allow you to follow the story with your friends if you want to. We still want you to encounter strangers so that you can still build, for me, one of the most important part of an MMO is I made so many friends doing this, and we still want this into the game. But we're trying to make it a bit more that it doesn't affect your gameplay. And then areas like Agartha, for people familiar with it, are still extremely massive. This is when we've done a lot of changes to even encourage people to meet each other and kind of discuss, find things they have in common in the way they like to play the game, and then embark on an adventure together. So it's kind of trying to get the best of both worlds there.
All right. I had another kind of a follow-up question to that. Will you be seeing an increase in map performance by putting a hard cap on the number of players that can go into a map at any given time? Is that one of the reasons for?
So every time, going into a more technical standpoint, when you're in a playfield, every single person in there, you need to transmit data to them, and they have to transmit data to you. So the more people that are in a playfield, it's going to have a hit on performance.
Okay. So how long ago was the decision made to convert the Secret World into Secret World Legends? And is that why the content for the Secret World was so anemic in 2016?
I believe we originally made the decision around the start of 2016. We started throwing the idea around. And then we started active development. A very small amount of people started active development on it around August of last year. Then we had the entire team start working on it in January of this year.
So why was there a decision not made, like, say, a year or two back to ramp up production of new content in Secret World to sell more money, to make more money, as in to sell more issue packs? Because what we were, of course, following the finances, we know that it's been on a kind of downward trend, and live games, while providing money, have been providing less and less. And Secret World seems to be making most of its money from box sales, content sales, and cosmetic shops. And from a player's perspective, I've seen so little new content and cosmetic options that how am I even supposed to be giving you money at this point? Why not make more money by producing more content?
Yeah, the making more money by producing more content stopped being viable around the beginning of last year, so 2016. Okay.
Even earlier than that.
It was still fine. Like, so when we release content, we work on it for 4 months. The entire team's working on it. We release it. We always saw an uptake or an increase of active customers, and then that ended up. I don't want to throw around like generic like MMO metrics or whatever, but that made our average revenue per user increase. But the actual issues specifically were not turning a profit anymore. So like their side effect was creating a profit, but not like enough people. There weren't enough people actually buying them. It was actually a very small percentage of our customer base were actually purchasing the issues. And this goes all the way back to what we thought were amazing issues, like the second issue of Tokyo, or even the first issue of Tokyo.
Even before that, like, issue 5 and everything, it's always been somewhat surprising the amount of players who actually buy those issues. Like, the Secret World in particular is very unique in the type of content that we released, because it's, in simple, like, MMO terms, it's the most expensive type of content you can make for a game. It's not really about the quantity, is not necessarily about the replayability, it's about the story that we're telling. It's a lot of cutscenes, actors to go in, like getting the mocap scenes, as well as doing those handcrafted missions all the time. So they take a long time to do, they're difficult to produce, and then at the end of the day, when they don't sell that well, it makes things difficult. And obviously for us, what we want to do is to keep that story going. It's what we believe in. As a company and as a team here, like, we obviously love the Secret World. So it's kind of the idea of that relaunch came out of this, is like, we want to tell those stories. We need to find a way that's going to allow us to tell that story despite the fact that people apparently aren't really interested in buying it. Maybe if we give it to them for free, they'll play it. So it's kind of it's starting to finding what are other models, what are other means of making this viable. And then so it was the idea, like this is when the idea of relaunching germinated into a flesh product.
That kind of leads into some other questions I had about the business model. So looking back at Secret World, of course, you had several different revenue streams. You had your box sales, your content packs, and your cosmetic items. And then, maybe subscriptions on top of that. Now, Secret World Legends, you're taking away box sales, content packs, and subscriptions and doing this new free-to-play model. So my question is, from my perspective, by reducing your revenue streams, how are you possibly going to make more money and keep this game going?
Yeah, that's sort of what caused the entire change of the game and what caused us to want to relaunch. It'd be true if we just made the Secret World free to play. It wouldn't have been viable for us. More people would have come in, but it wouldn't have really worked as far as like conversions and making money. So, if we go back to like when we released the Deep Mystery Box and the Mystery Box, like that made a lot more money than any piece of content has ever made for us. It's just the economics of free to play is that even if you love the story in Secret World, the most you can ever purchase are the issues, right? You can't purchase issue 15 again.
Yeah, it's a one-shot purchase.
Right, yeah. So what we're doing with Secret World Legends is the traditional free to play is we're making some fundamental changes to the game so that there's more of a progression aspect to it, that there's more things to unlock, that there's more difficult content, like from a system standpoint. And then there's still the story that's free and it will always be free. And every piece of content story related that we release will be free. But we'll also have more difficult dungeons, scaling dungeons that go up to whatever, that people can go on. And then there's associated monetization around that.
It's kind of the idea of progression, really, and more of the idea of time, what is actually really precious to a player at the end of the day. And time seems to be like the most precious commodity for people. So we really want to make sure that and that's what is hugely important about Secret World Legend is like all content is free and will be free. We don't want to have any kind of locks. We want people to enjoy that story because this is what we want to keep releasing. So you'll have all this no matter what. You can play at your own pace and you'll be able to tell the story. There will be no gating in content. But
so if I'm not spending money in your store, am I going to be at a disadvantage gameplay wise?
What do you mean by disadvantage? Like, are you?
Will I need to spend money in the store to overcome content? There's some MMO free-to-play models that will penalize you if you don't subscribe or you don't pay into their store, into their model, so that progression is a lot more difficult, slower experience,
right?
Special gear that you can't get otherwise.
Yeah, so no special gear that you can't get. So in beta right now, we have none of the monetization hooked in, essentially, and people are able to play through the game up until where we have in beta. So right now we've released to the end of City of the Sun God. Yeah. And then at the end of this week, we'll release beta 4, which will have the first 2 Transylvania playfields. So you'll be able to get through all of those without ever spending any money. And we've designed it around the fact that you don't need to spend money to enjoy the content there. Now, when you get to max level, there will start being some harder content. You'll still be able to do that if it's free. However, you could probably, progress faster if you, spend money or buy. It's like the AP injectors from TSW. You can get more skills quicker if you spend money, type thing.
It really goes back to this idea of time. We really we are not making content it's ever going to be too difficult for someone who hasn't spent money into the game. All it means, for the stories, for the main story in outdoor play fields, everything is balanced for you to just enjoy the game and play it at your own pace and freely. When you start going into the dungeon, I mentioned a few times before, is we're trying to have even more scaling of the difficulty. So some content is truly difficult. This is when people will have more of a choice. You can either still pay for free the entire time, and it will take you some time to progress. But a paying customer will get a small advantage in the fact that we will progress slightly faster. They'll be able to do certain things. But at the same time, we even put the system into it that as a paying customer, you will get a chance to trade with other people, so that other people who play a lot will get a chance to benefit from the fact that you injected cash into the game. So again, you could be, if you're very effective, you'll be able to have the base gear to progress really fast without spending a dime. But it means that you will need to take advantage of other players that do so and then trade with them, etc. Find a mean to have this idea of what is your time worth compared to another person.
Okay, so are you carrying across the idea of lockboxes? Will you have lockboxes?
Yes.
As part of your okay. So let's take a step back and let's I'm going to kind of role play a little bit and say that I'm a player who's been a long time Secret World player, and I've just heard this announcement about Secret World Legends.
All right.
And I've asked some questions. I'm trying to understand it from your perspective, but maybe I'm having a hard time understanding. Was there honestly no way to rework Secret World from within to include a new combat system and these other new features? Was the only option available to your team to create a second product?
I would say okay. So if you went onto our beta forums and read a lot of the hot topics, it would be on a lot of the changes that we're doing. So, reticle combat system, adding, levels and more progression to the games. Those are a couple of the hot topics. The skill wheel, we've completely changed it. Not only every ability in the game is different than it was before, but we've also put some restrictions on class building that weren't there in the Secret World. So we had a pretty honest discussion, and I would say the team and even management was rather split when we were discussing this. Do we want to make these massive changes and force everybody on it, or do we want to basically make a fresh start server that has these changes and allow people to play on that if they wanted to? And
give people the choice.
Yeah. And ultimately, we decided it was a better option for customers that they could play on the new servers, or they could play the old one on the old servers with the old system.
How is that a choice when you stop development on the old servers? And as you've just said, the main pull of the game is story. So if a player like me who really loves the story but was continuing to play on the old server, I have to restart. I have no other option. How is that much of an option?
I mean, so as we mentioned about it, that's the thing. Is like for us, you always felt like the drive of the game was the story. But as we mentioned earlier, that story doesn't sell that well. So there's definitely another pool in the game that has maintained people in. As you know, the Secret World is a very unique community of people who are very supporting of each other, and they just love that world. There's a lot of role play going on, and it's kind of if we had forced all the changes of the game to make it something different without giving them that choice, it would have destroyed the community. That scared us a little bit. We want people to, it would be lying to say that we don't hope that people from the Secret World will willingly go and try out Secret World Legends, say, okay, it's free to play, I'll give it a try, realize that, in many ways it is a better game, and say, cool, I will transfer now willingly because we gave them that chance. It's just forcing it upon them. It's ultimately bad. But for us, keeping the game running so they can still have those characters alive and keep the world and keep this great game going is still something that we have close to heart. One extra thing I wanted to add on what Scott mentioned earlier as well, it really is important to realize that Secret World Legends in many ways feels like a new game. When we decided to relaunch it, we looked at everything that was all of the downside of the Secret World. It was very easy to list everything that people liked about the game. They like the atmosphere, they like the story, they like the settings. But combat was an issue. A lot of people were very confused by the skill wheel, having too many options. It's something that a lot of people liked, but at the same time, it confused a lot of new players. The game introduction was very difficult as well. We realized we lost a lot of people at the start because they kind of liked the idea of the story, but they just could not get into it because of all of these barriers. So we're like, okay, if we had the chance of making a new game, what would we change? How would we respond to this? And again, the idea of Secret World Legends came through, and it became very clear that from our perspective, it would have to be a new game.
Are you worried about fracturing your community into two separate communities with this move?
Yeah, it was definitely one of the negatives or cons of the start a new server model. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're aware of it. At the end of the day, is we were gonna have to step on. There's some group of our current customers were going to be upset with either decision we made, because if we have a reticle combat system and they hate it, then we've taken that game away from them and they can never play it again. Like motion sickness is a problem. So some people can't play first-person shooters or third-person shooters. And so we felt that was the best option for everybody involved.
So players such as myself have spent years working on their characters and advancing through the storyline, only to be told now that we got to start over if we want to, play Secret World Legends.
Yeah.
Is there really no way to port over our progress from Secret World, even if it's just like the number of missions done? Was porting progress impossible or just really hard?
I would say it was just very, very hard.
Close to impossible.
I mean, there's always a solution for every problem, right? Like we could have made it work given enough resources and time. However, we didn't have it. Like the TSW team is actually pretty small compared to probably other MMO teams. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was the best option for the game to continue, for us to get free to play out in time, and for us to deliver on the quality level we wanted to, and to make it successful and give us the best chance to succeed. It was our only option.
And an important part as well, at least on the content side, is to give us a chance to make the content as good as possible. If we had the limitation that people need to be able to transfer like that progress over, we've done a lot of things with the missions that some flow are different. Some missions have been added as part of the story mission that answers new questions and give a better understanding of the timeline of the game. Those missions would not be saved on your characters, and it would mean like importing that character would pretty much be broken when you enter in SWL. You would have part of your content done, but the game would know exactly where you're supposed to be. So it would have been very, very restricting in actually creating the new content. So again, we decided like we are making a new game. Yes, it's a similar story and it's a similar universe, and it's based around the same core, but we felt it was better to tell people, you've enjoyed those 5 years in the Secret World, hopefully, and you felt like you got your money worth out of that. How about you give Secret World Legends like a fresh start and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes?
Sure, yeah. So, and there's hundreds, there's probably millions of characters. I don't know the exact number, but there's millions of characters at different points throughout the game, and it would have been a pretty massive technical hurdle unless we really restricted what we were able to do in the revamp, or the relaunch, I guess should be the proper term. So one of the main things we sat down when we were discussing the relaunch is that one of the pros for a new server is that we could essentially change anything without having to worry about a massive database task of going through, verifying where everybody is in specific steps, reproducing that transfer over, and then making sure that it works for the rest of the game. And so, like I did say, it was possible. Pretty much anything is possible. It just wasn't plausible with what we wanted to do.
Finding the equivalency. We were talking about like months, if not years, of added content with potentially a worse end product. So it's kind of it was a hard decision. Honestly, the day that we made it, and we anticipated that certain players would be obviously angry about this. Like I'm a big player myself, and it's annoying to feel like, what have I done all these years, and I wasted my time. I think it's important to remind people is like, ultimately, I hope you didn't waste your time because you were playing and you were enjoying yourself, and you saw part of the story, but now like be ready to explain that story again. Like I want to say like the way it was meant to be told. It's amazing for us. It's such a great opportunity as well to go back at this game from the way it was launched, we had parts that we had to rush at launch, like every single game launch happens. But in the last 5 years, there was so many what if that popped up, so many things that we really wanted to do that, I kept adding on my to-do list as I like referring to, and it was a great opportunity to grab the to-do list and say, what did we want to do? Like, what didn't work out the first time, and let's fix it. So it's, making people see all of these little change. I think they'll appreciate it even more. Like, particularly if they know the Secret World really well, if you made many characters, I think they will notice even more, like those little stuff that we changed that will make them appreciate the world more that time around.
Yeah, I think there's this feeling of a mixture of anxiety and excitement. And It's always a question of which is bigger. For me right now, I'm rather more anxious than I am excited. But, I do appreciate your straightforward answers, and I'm sure this is a big change. I am curious about Funcom's analysis of the risk of this switchover. Has the company done any evaluation over kind of estimating how many players they stand to lose with this change versus new ones that they'll pull in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have a product manager that works on that pretty much, not specifically that full time. He does a lot of other things also. But yeah.
So you think it'll be a net positive for the game overall?
Definitely. I mean, the amount of customers will just going free to play brings in a lot more customers. It makes user acquisition substantially cheaper as far as, that's paid ads and everything else like that. So yeah, we've set it up. We've balanced the economy in a way that we hope, and we've done analysis on it that it should work and should come out for us to be able to release season 2, later this year, or start on season 2 later this year.
Actually, that was my next question. The one thing pretty much we hear over and over in the comments that Secret World players want to hear is, when are you going to be adding new zones? When are we going to hear these new stories? You've hinted that this change is needed to make that happen, but very little information on what the next steps for the game are.
Sure, yeah. And as we get up close to launch, we'll actually maybe even later this month. So I'll need to look at the marketing and PR timeline. But we're going to be publishing our post-launch roadmap, which will show when specific features are coming in, and then when we'll start actually releasing season 2. So there's a couple things that won't be in launch. So the big glaring one is Tokyo won't be there for launch. That will be released because if we want to take a tangent on Tokyo, there's more rework we need to do there because the Aegis system. So once that's done, we'll release Tokyo. That should all be within the first 3 months of launch or post-launch, and then we'll release the first section of season 2 sometime later this year.
Okay, you just jumped ahead to 2 more of my questions. Look at that. You have this wonderful opportunity to nuke easily the worst system in the game, which is Aegis. But I'm sorry, this is my personal.
What are you talking about? It's wonderful.
Oh, I hate Aegis with an undying passion.
Sure.
I love the Secret World. I will put up with so much, but I've had a beef with Aegis. But I'll put that aside and just say, so you are going to be looking at the Aegis system.
The Aegis system will not be the same in Secret World Legends.
It's not going to be a Bejeweled clone, apparently.
What's that?
A Bejeweled.
Bejeweled. It's going to be a Bejeweled. Yeah, you're going to stop in the middle, and it's match 3. We've done a lot of research on match 3, and it's super popular. So yeah, that
would still be better than
play, man. It's how it works.
I mean, Aegis was probably a mistake. It's one of the things where the original design behind TSW sort of painted us in a corner.
Yeah.
And that was an attempt to fix something. We didn't do it very well though. So it's one of the other things that Secret World Legends allows us to go and fix is our mistakes.
It's one of the issues. Yeah, Aegis was more of a necessity than something we really wanted. It's not something that we're particularly proud of here. We needed it because of this idea of having this end game and having this kind of progression locked from the player. We needed a way to try and reset it. So we had a way to reward players because, of course, video games mean rewards. Nobody will play something just because it's fun. They'll play it because there's something to get out of it. So Aegis was our way to do that. It's really tied into the lore. So there's part of this that we do need to keep. But in terms of systems, we can revamp into something that's going to be not as aggressive and annoying as it plays. So it's But yeah, again, we just need time to do this after we finish the rest of the content. So that's why we're delaying that launch a little bit, but not by much.
Right, because originally said you were launching in spring, and now you moved it into summer, and you're taking Tokyo out. So is it just beta's not progressing fast enough, and you need to get the game out, or?
We really never intended for Tokyo to come out with Secret World Legends, so that's not like we've cut that. We did move we've had several different launch windows. So today we announced June 26th, which it's still in Q2. I think that's what we promised. I guess it's not really spring anymore, though.
It's the beginning of July, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of summer, sorry.
But yeah, beta is actually coming along really well. I think during beta 2, somebody asked me on our forums, asked me for a content roadmap, and I told them that we plan to have everything launch that we had planned to include in launch done by Friday of this week. So we're still on track for that, at least iteration 1.
Great.
Yeah, the delays aren't really caused by actually content progression, like we're exactly where we want it to be. There are other reasons, but in terms of content, we got what needed from the beta. Like the feedback is, the majority of the feedback is positive. A lot of people are.
I'd say constructive.
Constructive.
Yeah, that's a better term. I mean, there's definitely negative feedback.
Yeah.
Like,
that's also the majority. Yeah. Like we got. The thing I'm enjoying the most about feedback is a lot of people who were concerned about some of the things you already talked about are coming around and starting to see that, yes, it is a new game. And so that anxiety you were talking about is lifting off little by little over our beta players. So it's reassuring for us that, we feel like we're doing the right thing, and we get this kind of feedback. And at the same time, I'm the worst offender of this. Is I get a lot of great feedback that makes me want to say, oh, how about we try that as well, and obviously. So the team hates me right now.
Got to keep the feature people up.
So. Okay, so when are you guys planning on dropping the NDA?
I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. Probably the end of beta 4 is what I'm hoping.
Okay. We were a little surprised when the announcement this morning about the launch date, and we thought that would be paired with it. But okay.
Yeah, we want to. There's a lot of GUIs and user interface that still aren't done yet. And since that's such a forward-facing thing, especially when you see a screinshot of something and it's coder art, we want to make sure all of our coder art, even though I don't want to. I mean, our coder art is beautiful, but it's not as good as a UI designer actually going in there and redoing the UI. So. Yeah, okay. That's the main thing.
One of the big changes you guys are touting in Secret World Legends are improved animations, which I know was a sticking point with some of the community for a long time, that movement and animations and combat felt a little awkward, a little off.
Yeah.
Yet, from my perspective and from some other comments, and I'm not trying to generalize for everybody, but just saying from some perspectives, we've seen very little difference between what you've been live streaming in the game's combat and movement animations and the ones that are already currently in the Secret World. So I guess my question is, what improvements have you made to the animations, and are there more to come?
I think it's a way people understand these animation changes. Like, we are not going to redo all the animations in the game. It's a tremendous amount of work. We have like thousands of animations, so we try to make sure we focused on the right thing. So the main thing that we focused on was combat in particular, making sure that all of the abilities have animations who feel good, feel powerful. Connect better with the monsters to try and give a bit of that glue that lacked combat. So a lot of this is already helped simply by the reticule system. Having like a different camera angle makes that combat feel so much more visceral than it ever had. And then on animation, it's like a lot of the time is split across all of those new abilities that we have into the game. We have more plans to try and see what we can do, like regarding some of the character idols and some of the other movements, but they're definitely secondary to what we're doing with combat. And at the same time, it's also something which is now open for a more ongoing system. So
yeah, and to build on that, what you're seeing on live streams is iteration 1 a lot of times. So then we'll do iteration 2 when we're done with that. We've changed direction a couple times through development, So we are a little bit behind on that promise, but we'll keep on working on it until launch. Just because right now we're focusing on the combat animations, like Romain said, but we still have plans to improve, generic animations like strafing and walking.
Is my character ever going to get that crick out of her neck? Because she's been tilting her head to the side
with a shotgun. Yeah.
for 5 years now.
So this has been toned down a lot already, and we're looking into potentially it further, or maybe even getting rid of the animation. It got on everybody's nerves here too, so it's but it's already been toned down a lot for SWL. So your character is a bit less fidgety than or as a male character, like having your beard scratch.
Okay, yeah, I heard we're getting beards. That's awesome. I know some people are very happy about that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the combat, because that is the big change with the new reticle system. First, I wanted to ask you, time to kill. I always kind of had this perception that Secret World had a higher time to kill with some of its mobs, even after the change you guys made a couple issues back. Is the combat more or less the same in terms of how fast it'll take you to kill a character?
We've made a pretty big change to how the system works. So there's no longer a builder and consumer system. Instead, everything works more like Magic did before, where you I had to get my weapons right. Where you start out with full energy, and then you still have power abilities or consumers. And then so everybody starts front loaded as far as what you're able to do. So it's really only on long fights that you really actually see the time to kill. Because we allow you to front load your damage a lot.
So it feels less spammy, too?
It's a different kind of spammy, I guess.
Okay, click instead of 1 1 1 1.
Yeah, it won't be 1 1 1 1 1 2 3 and then repeat that over and over again. It might be left click, right click, left click, right click, then do some other stuff.
The thing you'll notice, I think, the most is like we do have a little bit of that click 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 effect, and it's because it works. Like some of the outdoor combat, because again we focus on the stories and different monsters, like you can kind of use this energy up front and then spam it. Once you become a more efficient player, you realize that the actual other abilities are really important, like trying to conserve that energy is huge. So if you end up front loading everything, you will end up decreasing your DPS. So it's making the end game rotations way more interesting. But yeah, in the basic game, in the outdoor playfield, it's a lot more about using, and that's why as well the animations are important, like getting cool abilities and feeling like your character is powerful. But yeah, and you see it even from the Polaris, like low level dungeons, you will see that if you just click all the time, you'll end up being out of energy. Like, I mean, literally like I am on the stream, like a couple of weeks ago, I was trying to play while speaking at the same time, so wasn't really paying attention to my abilities and ended up running out of energy a lot. I was like, oh no, I need to start swapping things and using my cooldowns better and doing those things. So
okay. I had a question about the game engine. So the Dreamworld game engine that underpins both Secret World games is aging at this point, and some would argue will not support the faster action combat that you're trying to develop for Secret World Legends. How do you respond to this, and is the engine incapable of creating a smooth and reactive combat experience?
That's an interesting question. I don't think the engine really would have anything to do with that. It's just more like how we implement things using the engine that would cause that. I mean, neither of us are like engineers, so.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a wrong statement. Like the speed of combat doesn't really matter for this. As long as the server knows what's going on, it's fine. Some of the things our engine were dating a little bit. It's some of the things that we've noticed is having like 50 people, 60 people in open playfield killing the same monsters, having all of the combat formulas, all of the spell effects being in a very short area was causing the servers to struggle sometimes. At the same time, it's getting graphic lags from people around. So two type of detrimental effects. And some of the changes we've done in design now are gonna avoid this. We're still gonna have like the big fights that we wanted to, but they are going to be in more controlled environments who are built for that, so they're not as intensive on graphic cards, so people can play more like the Flappy fight that we did, like to if you remember the Whispering Tide and all those things that happened, they worked a lot better with tons of players. So we've learned from this, and we're trying to make sure we give a better experience to all players, no matter what your machine is capable of running.
And earlier you said that you've gotten a lot of constructive feedback, constructive criticism from the beta test so far. Can you maybe remark on any changes or any decisions you've made based on that feedback?
We've changed the reticule system quite a bit from feedback. We went in there with, this is how it's going to work, how most designers do. And we implement it that way. And then when somebody complains, you're like, oh, you're just not playing it right, But instead, wow. But instead, looking at it and actually tackling it from a usability standpoint, there's been tons of great feedback on the reticle system and improvements we've made.
It was really interesting. I mean, it's, part of my job is to try and please everybody and try to get myself into everybody's shoes of how they play, like the type of players that they are, and even how they play, whether they have disabilities or preferences and stuff like that. So in redesigning a whole combat system, it was definitely something that I forgot stuff. Like there was a lot to keep in mind. So the beta was really, really a huge help into having people like bring up issues that I hadn't really considered before that, like simply and some of the issues where simply like people saying, hey, I don't play with a mouse. Like, for me, it's like, okay, well, it's a game that you play with mouse and keyboard. Sometimes people playing with a controller. What can we do to have it work this way? But I never considered the idea of people play without a mouse. So going back, it allows us to go back and iterate into saying, hey, we can give us options for people to try and mold that reticule into something that they feel comfortable with. And we have tons of examples of this that, like the way the game plays now compared to it did in the first beta has definitely improved, and it expands more than it changes. Like, we still have the core part that we had at the beginning. We have iteration that makes it better feedback, but at the same time, we give people options to try and find that way that they like to play. So the one thing that we're not going to have is like all like TSW style tap targeting, because the whole game is there to embrace the reticule, but we don't want people to think of the reticule as being an impediment. It's how combat is, but there's a lot of way for you to customize it. Like, some people are simply like annoyed or also triggered by the fact that the reticule is even in the middle of your screen, and there are options to just remove it if you don't want to look at it. Like, it's still what is important is your character is somewhat facing what you're trying to aim at. We don't want people to just throw a fireball that way and have the fireball just go into a completely different direction because it's what you happen to have tap targeted. So, and all of this helps into having a game that feels way, way more immersive when you have all that. Like we're talking about, like just for fun, like the other day we're playing the mission in Tokyo where you are in the basement and you have the Gakis following you. With reticule mode, that mission is really, really freaky, and it's nice because it really allows us to bring the roots back of the Secret World, that it's still like a game who has, horror roots, and that helps a lot. Like, it's more immersive, which is I'm very happy about.
Are you able to zoom into first person or to first screenshots or first person combat?
Yes, actually, currently, like on the beta, you can only zoom very closely. We had an issues that with the way the camera works going from reticule, but this was actually, funnily enough, fixed this morning. So we've re-enabled being able to go all the way to first person today. So
nice. There's a vanity mode, so you can toggle that and see the front of your character, since you can't actually.
And we're nothing if not vain in this game, right?
Yeah, definitely. You need to see all those swanky clothes you're wearing.
All right, last question, fluff question. Best NPC in the game, favorite NPC, go.
What's your favorite?
For me, it's Suleiman, so it's probably Kirsten Giri. I love a sass and the snappiness of the character. She's a lot of fun. It's awesome that she's one of the most vocal characters we have on Twitter as well, and she's there all the way through the game as well. So she's fairly awesome. But I have a soft spot for all of the guys in the Smith Academy. So like Montag, Carter, the inspiration behind those characters are very close to my heart. Like even actually like Céline and Aurélie, like these are based around one of my favorite French horror movie of all time. So there's a lot of little Easter eggs this way that it's really hard to just pick one now that I think of it.
Yeah, I mean a lot of the police station NPCs are great. You've got Andy and Moose, and their relationship is pretty awesome.
Their romance.
I think Henry Hawthorne is probably my favorite character, though. What's funny?
Yeah, good old Henry.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you taking the time to answer our questions, and good luck with the rest of the testing and the launch.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. You can also follow us on Twitter at MassivelyOP. We're also on Google+, Facebook, and Twitch. And of course, if you'd like to support us financially, we won't stop you from doing so. Go to the right-hand side of the site and check out our Patreon program, where you can support us as low as $1 a month.